Welcome to Fontribute, where we talk about fonts and their attributes. Fontribute. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with Erin, as always. Erin, great to have you back this week.
Hello, I'm back. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So Erin was in charge of font picking today, and we're on a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Erin, what are we talking about today?
Oh my goodness, we have what did you call it? Prisma type?
Prisma. Yeah.
Okay, basically this genre of kind of like multiple inlines in a form, and it's just dazzling and brilliant and crazy. Very crazy display style that looks very labor intensive to my eyes. Anyway, the two we're going to talk about is Nitti Mostro, and I believe this style is called Disco Inline, which is pretty cool. Staying Alive.
Hmm.
And that was released by Bold Monday, and Vibro, which was released by Signal Type Foundry. Yeah, so they're interesting and complex, and hopefully everyone can see them at our with the screen resolution, because these are typefaces that look very good at large sizes, of course. So
Ah, yes. Yes. So yeah, this is very dear to my heart because I had a project called Asote that dabbled in this. So there was one style in my typeface family that was kind of in this genre of thinking, but not nearly to the same intensity that these guys are going. So this is, as I hinted at in the intro, this is a topic and a genre that I find very dear to my heart. I think it's probably one of the most challenging projects a type designer can handle, right? Because it's such much complexity you have to deal with in the project. So I think it's very rewarding as a people learning type design to explore and see what's going on here.
yeah, and even actually, even at this scale, um, looking at that smaller size below the with the alphabet side by side, um, you can see that the Nitti Mostro it looks darker than Vibro, and that's just because there's more lines happening within the form, and it's like, it's denser. I actually had to this font was probably, we think it was probably designed at a different resolution, or kind of like a different grid. What would you call it? Pixel grid size, or whatever you would
Yeah, is
describe
it
that.
is it
Yeah,
is it it's not PEM, is it?
or yeah, there might, or PPM,
Wow, I am such a
something.
nerd that I remember
I don't know. Yeah,
that.
but like probably 2048, I think, resolution versus the Vibro, which was probably 1,000. We're guessing, but basically we mentioned that because I typically on this in Fontribute, we like to show two fonts at the same exact point size. But here in this case, I had to actually make Nitti Mostro larger because within its dimensions, it it was kind of smaller than Vibro, so I had to maximize it. So I'm just telling you that because for people who don't know, that points, when you have two different fonts looking at them side by side, point size they might not look visually the same, even though they're the same point size. There's some variables. So disclaimer, there you go.
Yes. Good times.
Anyway,
All right. So
let's dive in.
let's dive on in.
You
Great.
go first,
Yeah,
please speak.
certainly. So I think the first thing we can obviously notice is the construction of these two are very different, right? Nitty is going for this one stem, then there's an arch and over. Rod Vibro is this kind of more like, it's funny. I find funny that Nitty was called this disco inline because this one with Vibro feels very like disco 70s attempt with this kind of geometric simplified form of the skeleton idea. So I think that's really cool. Or just interesting
Definitely.
observation, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, I know Nitti Mostro, that's actually a multi-style type design or type family. They have a few different like decorative styles that they kind of applied, to the same kind of base structure, base framework. So that's probably why they chose a more traditional kind of construction here. But yeah, I agree. I love the I love the Vibro, very 1970s geometric construction. And as you can see, with that construction, the Vibro it's a lot more, I would call, if you can call this monolinear, there's less stress happening, less contrast. I mean, when you check out the widths of each of these strokes, this designer really attempted to make all of these lines kind of have the same optical width. Whereas in Nitti, you can obviously see with this example that there's tension, where there's tension here, where they're in a normal contrast typeface, the same thing happens with these lines. They get denser and thinner, and we're going to see that across the board throughout the design.
Actually, before we move on too, there's a general problem with kind of, or just issue that these designs have to, a designer has to decide when they're doing a Prisma design is, do you introduce contrast in your strokes, vertical versus horizontal? I'll give an example. So looking at the vertical to the horizontal in Vibro, it appears the designer made the decision, no, they're basically probably mathematically the same in their measurements. And that causes optically, if you were to kind of look in isolation, this is thinner than this, even though they're the same measurement mathematically. Meanwhile, in Nitti, they made the opposite decision. They said, no, we're going to introduce contrast into our strokes. You can essentially see it at the joints. Notice how the thinness is happening at these joints where the one stroke merges to the other. This was a dilemma I dealt with immensely in my project because I chose this option, and it amplifies the problems by order of magnitude. So I just want to take a moment to show appreciation for that challenge of introducing contrast in your strokes when you have all these multiple strokes built on top of each other.
Terrifying. I hope it was somewhat automated in some way. I'm sure it was. And then one other thing while we're here, before we move on, actually, once you placed your cursor over here, I realized another interesting thing, excuse me, you'll see in Vibro is there's kind of an approach where the designer's trying to minimize having like counters. So, as you can see, there's no real, like, we've got like a kind of a mini counter here for the Nitti, but in Vibro there's none. So you're going to see that in a lot of the letters, that it's kind of they're trying to make like a very closed form without big white spaces in the middle. So interesting.
I think another way to say that is if you look at the gaps between the black bars in Nitti, for example, do you notice how smaller these are, right? Versus the largeness of this. So that basically creates that counter, right?
Right.
The difference in sizing those white spaces. With Vibro, they appear to be roughly equal, right? This space versus the whites next to it. So that results in this kind of removal of the counter, right? That same effect or feeling.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Let's check out the O. Let's see how that worked.
Got it.
Isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
God. That is so neat. I think it goes without saying.
It's like an arrow. It's like
it's a dartboard. It's the new Target logo for Target brand. That is beautiful.
Couldn't resist.
I love it. It's so graphical. Like it's such a Vibro is like, it is really a true like Nitti. Obviously, okay, as we can see here, like Thomas said, it has the contrast, and it has it's a more rectangular form. It's a lot more I don't know, it feels a lot more like, a typical contrasted typeface in terms of, I can tell why they're doing the things they do, whereas Vibro, it's like so graphical and just like, it almost just becomes an abstract logo thingy. You wouldn't know what it is. So it's really cool. Vibro obviously is going to be great for those display instances where you really want the type to be integrated in your whole like brand approach and all the graphics you would make for some sort of campaign. Whereas Nitti still feels, this form feels still a little bit more like a type form to me, rather than going all the way out, Anyway, I'll let you talk. I'll let you blurb.
No, it's all good. I think, again, the big thing with Prisma designs, it's really the tension is, so it's already hard enough to draw a black space and a negative space once, right? Remember there's like a black shape and the white space inside. Well, now in this case, you have all these black lines, right? And then you also got to design for these white spaces between the blacks, right? So again, the same solution, that seems to be an equally distant white spacing between the black bars in Vibro inside the counter, the O, for example, gives this repetitious graphic feeling, right? I think that's, as Erin said, it's very graphic and very dominant. It's very dominating, right? It's such a punchy thing to see as a design approach. Yeah, and Nitti, we definitely confirm like this contrast decision, looking the vertical to the horizontal, right? Basically from here to top and left. Yeah, and it's crazy. It's actually, and again, notice the emphasis of maintaining a counter of a larger size versus the smallness of the white spaces between the strokes, right? So this is just as much the decision as much as the drawing itself, right? The overall outline and effect. This discussed. The last note I just want to comment, just take notice again because of how kind of the boldness both projects are trying to do. Notice how tight your side bearings are, left and right, in both directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must be really hard to space a typeface like this. Oy, oy, oy. I can't imagine. Oy.
Fun.
Tricky.
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
Yay.
Ah!
Cute. So, I mean, both typefaces, I mean, one thing we can observe is both have very tall X heights, which is, I guess, what we can notice by introducing the ascender here. They both have very tall X heights, which you would have to do in order to fit all of these, all of these lines in here. My God. So that makes a lot of sense. And again, it's funny, this literally, the Vibro, because it's a lot more geometric in its construction, it really does feel like, okay, it's part of the O we observed kind of, slapped on without, like we said, without having a distinctive kind of counter form as we see in Mostro. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously notice also the decision, we saw in the end too, I didn't talk about it, this whole decision of like, notice the way that both these make the decision of it, like they clarify their forms with this kind of overlapping of strokes, right? We get this feeling like this ascender and stem is in front of this shoulder and second stem, right? Because of how the strokes are positioned next to each other. Specifically the fact that like this black bar is allowed to go straight through down, right? Both in attempt that solution. So one of the strategies for making this font legible, right, was this kind of priority of stroke order, right? One stroke's go in front of other strokes to help define what form we're looking at. And again, we can also see this introduction, right? Basically, this pure geometry approach. It's kind of like there's basically no joint. It's just a shoulder. It's just pure shoulder in the Vibro versus a shoulder and then a joint coming down, right, with a lot of tapering to compensate versus the lack of tapering in Vibro. So I think this is a great slide to show between the two.
Very cool.
Time.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I mean, I guess all of these are going to be great examples to show that construction, like you said. I mean, when you're doing a typeface with that's really kind of far from, it's very abstracted, like Vibro, you have a limited number of options of how you can make this legible. And like you said, they could have attempted to make a circle and then do the straight attachment, but it would have made it a lot wider. I mean, there's like, and it could have been, I don't know what it would have been. Gosh, this just makes me want to experiment and see like what things would look like,
like basically like a half round.
Yeah, or something. But I love that they chose this, this swoopy sort of go in, kind of like everything following the same path. It looks like a record spinning. Anyway, but it'll be cool because I'm sure elsewhere in the typeface we're going to see this form is going to be reflected in the P and the Q and the B. I'm sure it's all related. So anyway, love it. Nitti, of course, like we said, it's more type influenced, and wow, that's very tricky. I know why this typeface looks so dark and dense at smaller sizes. This is going to have to be used large, or this is going to, fill in visually, but it's just dazzling at a large size. It's very cool to see. Impart your wisdom on me. Tell me what you are seeing here.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, one is the skeleton difference between the two, right? We could definitely see that. And yeah, just the extreme reduction of weight, right, to get this space to fit. That's the whole game plan. It's kind of quite an amazing accomplishment, I must say. Also, it looks like, I can't confirm it. I'm not 100% sure if I can confirm it, but I think there's been emphasis placed on the outer and like the strokes furthest out and furthest in. They need to be heavier, or I think so, because this appears heavier. This appears heavier than this one. I can't really confirm. Basically, there's like a priority of strokes, right? Like the heaviest is the exterior part, and we'll let the inside ones kind of compensate by being thinner. To try to get this as much white in there to define the space as much as possible. So I just want to comment again, why is it such a complicated design process? Because there's all these other decisions you normally would not have to make in a normal typeface, right? If this was done like so, like just a simple two outline system, right? You don't have to worry about, oh wait, we gotta make sure we have like relatively even color between the steps inside the letter, right? It gives me very appreciation for this project.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's incredible. Now I'm curious. I want to check out the other styles they attempted. I know they did a bunch of different, I think they have some half-tone screened ones, all sorts of weird effects that they've applied to that same frame. Very interesting. What's the next letter? Let's see.
E time. Wow.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. Trying to make like horizontal lines to make that distinctive. E is so difficult in these sorts of styles. Oh, it's a hard one. Because look at this. Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here. But look, in order to fit this, check this out. These strokes just end over here. They don't continue because they're like, oh my God, there's no way we can get 1, 2, 3, 4, like 8 lines of black going this direction. So they did have to simplify here. And here, like, Lord, it's crazy. I mean, that is there are little bits that couldn't quite follow can't quite follow the system as exactly as we saw in the other letters. It had to be altered in order to make this recognizable. Gosh, is that interesting? Okay, you talk.
Very fun. Yeah, so definitely seen the strategy where you basically have to let these guys on the outside just stop, right? These guys on the outside have to stop so that these other ones can fold in to represent the shape. I love it. Outstanding. So yeah, so that's a really amazing accomplishment of draftsmanship to pull that off, right? And then likewise with Vibro, I love this chutzpah. Look at this negative side bearing. I love that.
That was weird too.
That's a fun overbite. Like that overbite's so out of control. It's amazing. Also want to take a moment. Like this is such a graphic typeface because take note of like how this cropping is happening right here. Like it gives us a feeling like this stroke is folding out, right? And then folding around like a piece of rope. Folding around. And I just love that hit was like that point right here was so precise to give a nice tension in this area right here. It's a very like this is the kind of typeface I expect like graphic designers to grab onto and use this as a template for like graphic posters or some kind of application like that because of these kind of considerations. Yeah, so it's fun. I think it's hilarious.
So cool. Fun. And I was tempted to make a slide just for the letter C, but the other interesting thing about the Vibro C is it looks like it's Pac-Man shaped. It is just like, like that. So that's definitely, so the E kind of has that same reference to the construction of the C, which, looked a little bit more like that. So it's kind of, it's neat that that was retained and they just figured out, like you said, it almost visually looks like it's folding into it, like it's nodding on itself. Very unique and interesting. Very cool.
Yes. G.
Yay. So this is the letter in Vibro that reminds me of that Olympic logo that was the inspiration for the one that you worked on. It's correct. One of these. Yeah, it's really interesting.
I think all these typefaces are like mimicked or inspired by the Mexican Olympics. Yeah.
Right. Definitely. Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, one thing we can definitely see is like the kind of similarity in design thinking as the A, right? The A and the G are both speaking to the same logic on this top segment. And again, the basic strategy you seem to do when you're dealing with this really bold Prisma styles is enfolding on themselves. They have to fold down themselves. Take notice of this strong, this one stroke is ultimately holding this whole thing together because it's defining this folding area right here, right? Then we get the stem, and then the terminal likewise folds over, and there's a really intentional cropping. Like take notice of how it's cropped right here to define which part goes where, like in relationship. It's really great. I'm actually really impressed by that cropping. It's really strong tension in the forms. It's really, I think it's really outstandingly made. So that's definitely the main note I'm seeing on the Vibro. Do you want to talk about Nitti a little bit?
Yeah, that's interesting because this seeing this, because they had sort of the limitations of using the same kind of kit of pieces and in different ways and trying to make it all work, if I were to look at this initially, and it kind of looks like the top counter is one size and then the tail has a little bit of a more visual, there's like an underbite or something happening. Not that that's a negative thing. It's just like how it had to be constructed, which is, I find interesting. Whereas here in Nitti, even though this is, quite long, it still has the more traditional, what we're used to seeing, kind of a traditional form of the relationship of bowl and tail of G, which I like. Which is going to be very legible. It's going to be interesting to see which of these. Obviously, I would assume this typeface would be more legible because it's based on these sizes, or based on I'm sorry, regular forms that we're used to. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I can add any more to it, but it's going to be cool to see how these perform all these little things, like how that's going to come across when we actually see it in text. I can't wait to see that. Woo!
Oh yes, the big build up.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. We got more to talk about.
Yeah, this is fun. S, what a challenging character for this approach.
God, I feel the pain. I feel the pain of Nitti, of how to do this, because I remember when I was working on mine, and I remember this whole process with this fucking spine and how to define that weight. I think they just chose not to deal with that problem. They just said horizontal, the verticals are the heaviest, verticals are the thinnest, and we're just gonna keep it as that. We're not gonna deal with the issue of how to add weight within the spine to harmonize that. So that was, I could see that decision being made, and I understand the reasons why they chose it, because there's just so much complexity, and it's like, where do you put the weight to add in extra weight to all these diagonal spine stroke areas? That's all I want to say about the yes.
Yeah, so, I think it looks surprisingly good. I mean, I think this looks a lot better than I would have expected it to. I think it looks good. Wow, that is difficult to do. But yeah, it's fun to see Vibro. Luckily, because of this circular form, they were able to construct this interlocking construction. But it is interesting that they did, previously in that G, everyone probably noticed that kind of rounded, that stroke ending in that counter form. It was kind of a little hot dog in the middle. Here they did. I do notice there is like a little bit of a bloop, like a little bit of a circular addition here to give it a little bit more of a distinctive form, so you can have a little bit better idea that that's actually representative of an open space up there, if you see what I mean. So that was kind of a nice tiny little note that they did to make it work well. And notice how it became, because of its construction, it is far narrower than the Nitti. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point.
Very cool.
Okay. You covered my points on that. So on to the comparisons.
Yay! Whoa! Okay. Do you want to talk first?
Sure. Basically, my eyes are vibrating. Like, I think that's why we call it vibro, because it's literally like vibration, right? Like because there's no counter removal, like there's no white space in this H. I actually, like, my brain started to merge all this together into one form. I can kind of see the difference because I have this differentiation of space between the letters compared to inside the letter, but nuts, like it's vibrating so intently in my eyes. Also, I can also verify the consistency of the strokes, causing the horizontals to feel lighter than, well, the horizontals feel heavier than the verticals, right? And how all these strokes are joining together at the crossbar of the H, making it feel heavier, like it's coming forward compared to the rest of the vertical strokes in the Vibro edition.
Oh, yeah, wow, that is crazy. I mean, like you said, I think if I were to criticize Vibro, I noticed that while preparing these slides, there are some instances where the spacing, like, it's like, oh, it just becomes a little confusing. So depending on what you want to use this font for, whether you want to confuse people or not, there are some instances where letters right after another become a little bit insane like this. Like you can't tell where it begins or ends. Whereas that's why this strategy is helpful, I think, in Nitti Mostro, where this is going to have a little bit more clarity. Not to say, I mean, obviously Vibro doesn't want to do that. They want it to be ambiguous, but just to be wary of that. Same thing like you said here, because there's no counterform in the H. I think that capital H is one of the weirdest characters in this entire typeface. It just looks so strange.
Yeah.
It's so unique and odd. And actually, something else we didn't note that checking the crossbar here, counting the strokes, and also the previous slide with the S. In Vibro, the designer was adding and subtracting like the number of strokes they were using depending on the form to make it look better and look visually similar. Whereas in Nitti, I think it remains the same throughout most of the characters. So that's also something interesting that I forgot to mention earlier. So anyway, cool.
Great points. Okay.
Cool stuff.
Moving on.
What else do we got?
That
oh, yay.
basic-
Okay, I forgot. I did put the C in there. There's the capital C. I wanted to add it just so everyone can see. And one more look, because the capital letters are just so distinctive in both of these typefaces, especially Vibro. I thought I just really wanted to say, God, I love the kind of weird folding and interplay and all the nodding sort of effects that are happening in Vibro. It's just gorgeous. I love it. Even here, you get kind of the same effect here in Nitti Mostro. They're taking a similar approach.
I would say one difference is kind of the abstraction level in Vibro is so intense. Like, look at that counter, right? It's like, is that even a count? Like
there's like no counter. It's like just folded on itself or something. It's bizarre. Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't know. It's
I love it. But if you're like, I want a counter there, this looks wrong. I can see that. I can see that too.
It's fun. Yeah, but notice again, the strategy of complex letters is folding over methodology. That's kind of the solution both are attempting, right? Which Prismas technically do. And I absolutely love this like fun Pac-Man. Again, it's so graphic. I think it's a really graphic approach to the form. And again, with negative side bearing, I love it's a very fun move. I'm curious how this is going to work in text.
Right. Yeah, spacing's a little interesting. What's our next slide? Oh yeah. Okay. Ooh, fun.
That is amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I think what really caught my eye in Vibro, I saw a tweet a couple days ago showing some of the accented characters, and I was just like, wow, these crazy little creatures. They're just so interesting, especially, of course, like the bug-eye diresis sort of thing. I love it. So it's really interesting how, the approach to the accents, the diacritics, here they're part of the form. They're literally like lying on top of it or integrated into it, whereas here they are a little bit above. And in Nitti, the designers chose to have, they reduced the number of lines and made them a little inferior visually, whereas here they're supposed to have the same impact and the same sort of weight. So it's also interesting seeing, this was tricky. How do you make, not that anyone's going to use quote marks. I don't know if they will, but if they do, it's interesting here that they chose, let's make, and I forgot the till. Now we can actually see that too.
Yes.
That was, it was de-emphasized or made visually smaller here, whereas here, whoa, super impactful. We even have overlapping of the quotes. Very crazy. All right, I will relinquish my time.
Telling all my points. Yeah, it's all good. No, definitely the kind of a strategy of folding, right? Folding over is definitely applied all over the place. And Vibro, right? I do want to take a second to note it's such an interesting move, this question mark, right? I kind of love it. It's such a fun move. I'm curious how text is going to roll with these, again, like de-emphasized moves, which again, it's a strategy for super bold typefaces have chosen to do sometimes. So it's interesting to see that. It's interesting to see just this de-emphasis decision made on the accent characters, right? So you can either like make them equal or you can go way undertone. I do want to take a special note of appreciation for the ogonek of the A of Vibro. I kind of love it. It follows the system in an odd way, like the stroke ends, right, and it starts at the end of the stem, right, but it's folded in. I absolutely love that. I think it's really fantastic.
That is fun. Interesting. And this is something I'd love to talk to people about, because usually you sit at the end of a terminal, the A of the terminal, and so I don't know if this is like something you see in display faces, if that's an acceptable response or not or something, or if they just had to do that because they thought like that would be insane if it went that far away. I don't know, but
Well, that's the thing. Technically, the organec has a rule where it's not supposed to go past the
yeah,
stroke, right? So this
yeah.
organec has to stop basically at the stem. The problem is, as you're pointing out, is like if you follow the system, it would have to like loop this way.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right.
Huh.
And they
Yeah,
and
which
they
would
already
be way
decided
too hard.
not to do overlap
Right.
for their other accents, so they chose not to do that in this one.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh, that's
Yes.
crazy.
Cool.
Woo.
Great times. Oh, and we got some words together.
Yay! Now we can actually appreciate the insanity. Oh my goodness gracious. That is cool.
Yeah.
Oh my eyes. But yeah, look at how narrow the capital
very
H
narrow
looks
H.
compared. And like this string, it's like starting to hurt my eyeballs, but maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. Maybe it's amazing. I don't know. Anyway, that's fun. Oh golly. I don't know.
That's fun. It's like you can feel like this is like a typeface, like a normal typeface, because of the decision to the white space between the letters versus inside the letters. These feel like letters that are meant to work together, right? There's a certain kind of
Yeah. Yep.
like they're typographic in that way. These feel graphic, like they're really more like individual units that have been placed next to each other in a lot of ways. I think I say it because of like this kind of the super abstraction, right? Basically makes it this is not the fault of the designer, it's just the fault of this model. When you do this hardcore 1970s geometry like this,
Right.
it's like, was that typeface baby teeth or something? It's like a similar
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Because you're right. Because of the restrictions on this, like check out. So usually in a typeface, you have there's like an overshoot with the rounded bits and stuff, and then you keep the flat things. Like here, the flat topped letters, the U, the V, like those to me look visually larger than all the rounded top letters. Like to me, they're like standing out. To me, they seem a lot larger because we don't have that same sort of approach that you get the optical compensations that you would in a typeface like this. So depending on what you're going for, obviously this design emphasizes the concept over the kind of visual those
corrections.
sorts of corrections, yeah, for text settings or whatever. But because like even I don't know, even just looking at BUR together, like that U is just it's a touch too tall. I think if I were able to change anything about this, I would maybe shave those down just a bit if it were possible. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, but then
we
the
can
problem is
disagree.
the
We can
problem.
disagree.
This is actually I'll comment again from my experience working on a Prisma-esque typeface.
Sure.
Yes, the rabbit hole you just proposed, that's the start of a slippery slope rabbit hole where
Yeah.
once you start adding those kind of typographic rules back into the system, then it's like, where do you stop?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just want to put a moment of a pause just to comment out.
Say, Erin, don't do that. Okay. Yeah. They
Well, you
probably
could, but
tried. They probably tried that and they were
they
like, oh
probably thought it,
shit.
and then they just said, "Fuck it, we're gonna be dogmatic in our system. We're gonna be going for this, fully committed, even if it causes weird ass overshoot problems."
Yippee. Oh,
Okay.
good. Here we go. Yeah. So there's no I didn't make a true text setting, slide for this because it made absolutely no sense. So this is as small as I am going for the word comparisons, but I'll let you speak because I've been yakking all.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's really interesting to see the color effect, right, in Nitti. Like this vibration I'm sensing, right? But like on certain letters, like the S, for example, all the curves have to crash in, or where the G connects with the stem, likewise in the N or the P. It's it has a certain color from the interaction of the lines, while Vibro, because it's so consistent in its stroke construction and there's not in that introduction of contrast within the letters, it has a more evenness of its color, its pattern it's trying to do. Both of them are creating patterns, but in different ways, which it shows different possibilities of prismas, right? You can do a more flat graphic approach, or this kind of really interesting sparkle effect we're seeing in Nitti. That's my just for general impression, just seeing it at this size.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. It's almost like a three-dimensional effect in Nitti. It's like it looks like things recessing, coming in and out of it, like shadow. Oh, I love it. It's very interesting. I like it a lot more than I was expecting. I think it's very beautiful. It's a lot of depth there. Whereas this, this right here it's making me dizzy in a completely different way. So
Yes.
it's it's crazy where there's no, the figure ground relationship has kind of gone out the wazoo, and it's like looking at a barcode or something.
Or
Like
yeah, one of those, or like yeah, or like just two complementary colors of equal space.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
right,
it's like
yeah.
your brain kind of like kind of freaks
Yeah,
out dealing
yeah,
with
it's
it.
fun. I love it. I mean, obviously, either of these is would be very cool for display purposes. I love these Z's. I love how they look kind of like a woven basket
Yep,
or
exactly.
something like that. It's so cool.
Yeah. I will
Yeah,
also comment before we move on, like just take notice of the decisions, some things like the comma and the is that an
right.
M dash you did?
Yeah, it's an N dash. Went for it because
Good stuff. No one ever
yeah.
uses M dashes, but I notice. I care when when you use the proper dash for purposes. Okay. Um, and vertical is a great term
Right.
for this. Vertical spinning.
Yeah, yeah.
Great terms, Aaron. Great job
Thank
stacking
you.
this
Good
proof.
word choice. Yes.
I think actually it's a very successful decision to create this really strong differentiation between like the emphasis, the primary
Yeah.
moves and the secondary moves. I think it actually works really well.
Yeah, it looks
Uh,
good. It looks good.
I'm gonna take a
Also,
second, a moment, take note of that.
yeah. Also, yeah, I included this because I thought that was interesting. Something I noticed. I think Vibro there was uh, in a few instances, I think I noticed a few spacing or kerning things that I didn't think were working quite as well as I wish they would. Not that this is a common thing someone's going to do, but yeah, I just when if we're looking at like tiny details of fonts, these are some of the things that I would like look at and just say, oh, if I ever use this, I'm going to need to kern this in and change that. But it's also neat because it makes me look at this freaking O slash
O
god.
slash.
Really, everyone check out the integrated diacritics on the capital letters in Vibro. They're phenomenal. They're so cool. Oh, and look at this. I love the J constructions. Those were kind of cool too. Both
Yeah,
of
that's
them.
fun.
Like, yeah. Anyway, I could go for hours about these two designs.
That's
They're
fantastic. All
they're
right.
fantastic. One more slide, I think.
One more.
Yeah.
Oh, the A-ring. Yo.
Wee.
That is amazing.
Yeah, these types of typefaces. I forgot. I actually did work on an inline typeface before. And
You did.
yeah,
Yes.
and my favorite I think the most interesting aspect we're designing things like the difficulties of doing some of the characters that don't get a lot of love in most typefaces. You actually have to think differently about these sorts of things. So like, yeah, another basket weaving opportunity over here in the
Basket
hashtag
weaving.
or the number sign. It's interesting. Uh, it's kind of cool. Um, oh, and the numbers. This was weird. Check out
That
the 8
8.
and the 3. Like, what the hell? It's so weird. I don't know if I like the 3 as much, but
That's
that,
intense. Yeah, because I literally see a white square
yeah,
because of
right.
how it's drawn. Yeah. I will say also,
um,
yeah, the 8, I'm a little surprised by the stroke order. I actually would expect the fold to go this way.
ah, ah, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, and look at the C, Cedilla. Oh,
No, it's a Dilla.
gosh.
Fun stuff.
Wow.
All
I'm
right.
just in love. They're both fantastic. I love this. This is it's a
Oh,
fun,
I do want to comment on look at
yeah.
that 8. Like I love it. Like again, the overlapping strategy. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So challenging. So kudos to the people involved with these projects. I can't imagine like this is just the most difficult thing to do. Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Hoi, hoi, hoi.
Have to
Everyone
agree.
buy these, buy the fonts.
Yes.
Reward them
I know
financially.
for their labor and suffering. Yes. Oh, yes. So, Aaron, what's kind of what are your conclusions at the end of all this?
Oh man, it's interesting that a genre can have completely different like approaches when it comes to the actual projects, like how you construct them and try to make this effect happen. It's bizarre. Like these constructions couldn't be more different between the two. Um, and they even the effects they look different too. It's such a it's so interesting. Now I want to kind of dive deeper into more display type with you and see if we can find other genres that have such huge differences between them. But anyway, it's neat to see different approaches. We've got, like we said, the slightly more, it is more a typographic based on traditional kind of typographic forms versus the more graphic graphic approach. I don't know if I have anything more to say except holy moly, ay caramba, etc. That's it. What are
Excellent.
you gonna say?
I mean, more or less, I actually think it's again like it's something we see, something we take for granted. We think Prismas can only be done one way, but in reality, there are many different ways to achieve the results, right? With different outcomes as we explored, and also just the the fundamentals of type design, the way we talk about type, in the in our more text oriented ways, or just as relevant in this. Like we're using the same discussions, it actually requires a maybe even more nuance. Like our whole discussion about negative and positive space is a whole nother. It was way more intense in this one because we had to deal with all these lines between the strokes as well as the whole as a total. So I think it's great to do this episode to recognize the hard work and the kind of dedications required to do these really crazy, funky typefaces. This is just as much part of the type design pantheon of what's the French word for work? Vers or whatever they're called.
I don't know.
Anyways, but I think it's relevant discussion, and yes, I agree, Aaron. I think it'd be great to do some more explorations of display typefaces.
I'm glad, you know what, I'm glad you mentioned that because I know that a lot of people think like the pinnacle of type design and expertise is in really well crafted extended character set text typeface. But hell, this is incredibly difficult and so many different options and so many, I mean, there are ways to do this wrong or right. There are things that can look good and don't look good. And I mean, there's so many moving pieces in this. So I just want to send love out to all the display type designers out there because you guys are amazing and you make incredible things. So done. Okay.
Done. Aaron, it's been a pleasure as always. Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
talking to you next week.
Yes, indeed. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.